When I walked into my brother's engagement party, the music stopped. My mother dropped her dessert fork. Someone whispered, "Is that Jenna?" They thought I was dead. They told everyone I ran away, but the truth? I was in a coma less than 10 miles away, and I remembered everything. "Hi, I'm Jenna Morgan. What would you do if your own family erased you to protect a secret? If your brother hit you with his car and your parents let the world believe you vanished? This isn't just about survival. It's about what happens when the truth finally speaks louder than silence. Have you ever felt invisible to the people who were supposed to love you most? Tell me your story below." The glass of iced tea slipped before I made it halfway through the gate. I heard it hit the patio, shatter just enough to quiet the jazz playing in the background. Then came the silence, the kind that stretches too long and feels too loud. I didn't stop walking. The Morgan family backyard looked exactly as I remembered. White tablecloths ironed to perfection, lemon squares stacked like centerpieces, string lights dangling overhead like a catalog spread. Someone had lit citronella candles, always for the bugs, never for the warmth. I passed the sweet tea pitchers, caught a whiff of Tyler's cologne in the breeze, and didn't flinch. That was a victory. The guests didn't know what to do with their eyes. Some looked at their plates, others at their phones. A few stared directly at me, like I might disappear again if they didn't blink. Karen, my mother, stood closest to the dessert table. Her grip on a tray of pecan pies had gone stiff. The tray dipped just slightly, her knuckles white around the silver. I remembered that grip. It used to hold me in place at church, always just tight enough to bruise, never enough to prove. She didn't say a word, not yet. My brother Tyler had paused mid-toast, the flute in his hand frozen inches from his lips. His fiancée touched his elbow, confused, her smile faltering. He didn't respond. And Richard, my father, stood beside the grill, tongs idle. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the twitch in his cheek. We locked eyes for a breath too long, and I saw it. The denial, the panic, the calculation. No one said my name, but I did. "You told them I ran away." The sentence floated out of me smooth and steady, like I'd practiced it in the mirror 1,000 times. Maybe I had, in my head, during all those sleepless nights. It didn't come out angry, just clean, sharp, like a thread being snipped. A few people gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I heard the tinkle of ice against glass, the scrape of a fork against a plate. Tyler's fiancée looked toward Karen, then back at me. Linda, my aunt, sat at the far end of the patio. She didn't speak, didn't smile. Just reached slowly for her glass and set it on the table. Eyes on me the whole time. She was the only one whose gaze didn't shake. I kept walking until I reached the center of the patio, standing just feet from Tyler. His posture was perfect, the way it had always been, straight-backed, head high. That's what our mother taught us, presentation before truth. "Do they know what you did?" I asked him softly. No accusation, just a question with roots. He didn't answer. He couldn't. His fiancée looked at him, then back at me, her voice just above a whisper. "Who is she?" And in that moment, I realized something. They were about to find out. My mother's love had a scent, sharp lemon cleaner and tuna casserole left in the oven too long. That smell clung to the curtains, to the seat belt in Dad's car, to the sleeves of my church sweaters. It was everywhere, and it was heavy. The house was always clean, not warm, not welcoming, just spotless. Our kitchen counters sparkled under the harsh light of fluorescent bulbs. The floors had no footprints. The dining table was set with a ruler's precision. Forks aligned, napkins creased. Karen, my mother, used to polish the silverware while muttering under her breath. "Presentation is respect," she'd say. But it never felt respectful. It felt like a warning. I was 13 the first time I got scolded for placing a fork a finger too far from the knife. I remember thinking how silly it was, how the casserole was dry and the rolls were cold, but somehow the fork was the problem. Tyler, of course, never placed anything wrong. His smile was always perfect, his hair just right, his varsity jacket hanging by the door like a trophy. When he crashed Dad's car into a neighbor's mailbox, Karen brought him cupcakes the next morning. A learning experience, she called it. When I came home late from work, 10 minutes past curfew, she turned off all the lights in the house and waited for me at the table, arms crossed. "You smell like grease," she said. "Track that oil through my clean floors and you're out." I was 16 then, working the night shift at the diner off Route 12. We served meatloaf, mashed potatoes, thick chocolate pie, real food, real people. I liked the cook, a woman named Deb who wore a bandana and called everyone honey without meaning a thing by it. She asked if I was okay once. I told her I was just tired. It was the truth, in the simplest way. Sunday mornings were the hardest. Karen wiped every counter 3 times, humming hymns under her breath like a clock ticking toward judgment. Dad sat behind the newspaper, like always, peeking over the top now and then with that far-off look like he was hiding inside the classifieds. Tyler tossed the football in the backyard and only came in when the casserole timer dinged. That night, the last night, I told Karen I wanted to take a break from school, not drop out, just pause, work more shifts, save up, figure things out. She stopped wiping the counter, turned slowly, laid the rag down, smooth and folded like a napkin at a wake. "You think life just pauses because you're tired?" she said, voice too calm. "You'll end up a waitress with nothing but stains on your shoes." My heart was pounding. I said, maybe that's still better than pretending this place is normal. And then it happened. Her hand came so fast I didn't even flinch until after. A slap, not hard enough to knock me over, but sharp. Precise, like her forks, like her tone. She didn't yell, just turned back to the stove like it hadn't happened at all. I didn't pack, didn't scream. I walked out the front door with nothing but my hoodie and my breath coming out in clouds. The porch light flickered behind me. I didn't look back. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in. I passed the corner deli, the closed thrift shop with mannequins still lit in the window. I reached the old gas station, abandoned since I was 10. I used to ride my bike there and pretend I was escaping. Then I saw them. Headlights. Fast. Too fast. And that was the last thing I remembered for a long, long time. They said I disappeared. Like I ran off into the night, left a note on my pillow, changed my name, and vanished into thin air. But the truth was less cinematic. I was lying in a hospital bed at County General, hooked up to machines, less than 10 miles from home. The first thing I remember was the beeping, then the dryness in my mouth, like I'd swallowed chalk. The lights were too bright. A nurse stood over me, dark hair in a tight bun, soft voice. "Hey," she whispered, like I might break. "You're okay. You're safe. You're at County General." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know my name. My throat burned when I tried to speak. The nurse, I'd later learn her name was Candace, held a paper cup to my lips. "Easy," she said. "You've been out for a while." 3 weeks. That's how long I'd been unconscious before anyone even knew I could blink on command. They called me Jane Doe, unidentified female, no ID, no phone, no visitors. They placed a short notice in the local paper. Unidentified young woman found near Route 12, possible hit and run. No one called. Dr. Patel was kind, if clinical. He told me I'd suffered retrograde amnesia, head trauma that blocked my memories. It might come back in pieces, he said, or not at all. I nodded like I understood, but inside I was blank, not sad, just empty. Like a wall had gone up and I couldn't even remember what was behind it. The social worker tried to trace me. She called every number on the emergency contacts they'd pieced together. When she reached a woman who answered to Karen, there was a pause. Then, "We don't know anyone by that name." And a dial tone. No flowers, No visits, no familiar voices down the hall. Some memories came back in colors, scents, cinnamon toast, the smell of lemon cleaner, a glass shattering, a voice, sharp, feminine, saying, "You're embarrassing us." I was moved to a long-term care facility downtown. The walls were pale yellow, always too warm. Nurses walked softly in rubber-soled shoes. I relearned how to walk, how to eat, how to write my name, once I remembered it. At night, I stared at the little TV mounted in the corner. Most nights it was news or reruns, but one night a song played, Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. The sound caught something in me, a pull I didn't understand. Can I handle the seasons of my life? My hands shook. I wasn't crying, but I felt something cracking, a flash of a football hoodie. Red, the smell of beer, the screech of tires, and a face, not a stranger's. Tyler's. I gasped. The heart monitor jumped. Nurse Candace rushed in, asked if I was in pain. I said no, but I remembered something. She brought in a therapist the next day. Gentle voice, kind eyes. I told her about the hoodie, the headlights, the voice in the kitchen saying, "She shouldn't have been out that late." That voice was my father's. The memories came in waves, my hand against a cold sidewalk, my name shouted once, then not again. The sound of the porch light humming. I remembered enough to know one thing. I wasn't lost. I was left behind, and they knew. Some people say memory returns like a whisper. For me, it was thunder, loud, sharp, unavoidable. It started with a melody, the same one that had haunted the edge of my sleep since the hospital. Landslide. It played one quiet morning on the TV bolted above my bed, and suddenly I was back in the dark again. I froze. My pen dropped from my hand and rolled to the floor. I could barely hear the words over the sound of my own breathing, but something inside cracked, not like glass, like ice thawing too fast. Can I handle the seasons of my life? I closed my eyes. Tyler's voice slurred from beer, a red hoodie, the letters QB stitched in white, his hands on the wheel, the screech, my body weightless, the smell of burnt rubber, and then silence. Later that day, therapist Daniels knocked gently and pulled a chair to my bedside. She was the kind of woman who never rushed a sentence, like the words needed to settle before you use them. "Sometimes," she said, "we don't get to choose what comes back. But we can choose what we do with it." I nodded and tried to smile. She asked if I'd been journaling. I handed her a page where I'd scribbled, "Red light, broken plate, Tyler's voice." I didn't know what it meant exactly, but she didn't need clarity, just honesty. That night, the rain came. Soft at first, then harder, tapping the window beside my bed, like someone knocking from the other side. I watched it trickle down the glass in uneven trails. For some reason, it made me think of Karen wiping windows that didn't need cleaning, and how she never looked me in the eye when she said, "You're lucky we even let you stay." I remembered the sound of my dad's voice. Not loud, not angry, just final. She shouldn't have been out that late. I saw the kitchen again. I wasn't in it. I was lying on the couch, bruised, dazed, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like detergent and fear. I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. They knew. They always knew. The next morning, Linda came. She didn't call first. She just appeared in the doorway holding a paper bag and a photo frame. She looked thinner, her smile slow but real. We sat by the window, not saying much. That was the thing with Linda. She never tried to fix silence. She just shared it. She handed me the photo. It was from the state fair, maybe 10 years back. I was grinning, cotton candy in one hand, Linda's arm around my shoulder. Tyler wasn't in it. Neither were Karen or Richard. "I never believed them," she said softly. I didn't cry. I didn't hug her. I just held the photo tight enough that the corner bent under my thumb. "They didn't forget me," I said after a long pause. "They erased me." Linda nodded once. That was enough. Later that day, Nurse Candace dropped off my discharge forms. She looked surprised I was well enough but said nothing. I stared at the folder for a long time. The rain had stopped. A few birds chirped outside, like they were testing if it was safe to sing again. "I'm ready to go home," I said to no one in particular. Then I folded the papers and stood. Just not to them. They planned it perfectly. Twinkle lights in the trees, classical music low in the background, lemon bars dusted with powdered sugar, just so. Tyler stood near the patio fountain, wine flute raised, looking like a magazine ad for Southern Charm. Guests swayed in folding chairs, laughter mingling with the soft rustle of evening leaves. Karen wore blush pink, like she hadn't aged since I was 15. Richard stood nearby, hands behind his back, posture stiff as oak. I stood just outside the fence, watching. I didn't come to ruin anyone's life. I came to reclaim mine. The moment Tyler began his toast, I stepped through the gate. No one stopped me. Not at first. Heads turned, slow as if choreographed. A neighbor blinked 3 times. A church deacon muttered, "Isn't that?" Someone dropped a napkin and didn't bother to pick it up. Tyler's fiancée, Emma, looked confused. She reached for his hand but missed. He froze mid-sentence, blinking at me like he'd just seen a ghost for the second time. "Please," he said to the crowd, his voice faltering. "Let's welcome." I raised my hand. "You told everyone I ran away," I said calmly. "But that's not what happened." Karen turned as if yanked by an invisible thread. Her face drained so fast I worried she might faint. A tray of lemon bars tipped in her hand. A few slid off the edge and hit the tablecloth. She didn't notice. Richard took 1 step forward but stopped himself. I held up my phone. "Should I play what Dad really said?" I asked. Gasps rippled. Emma looked between Tyler and me. "What's going on?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I tapped play. The speaker crackled slightly. Then came Richard's voice. Slow, slurred, unmistakable. "She's gone. You need to keep your mouth shut. You were drinking, and I can't protect you if this gets out." You could hear a fork clatter against porcelain. Someone choked on their tea. Karen let out a sound that was halfway between a gasp and a whimper. A wine glass slipped from a guest's hand and shattered on the patio stones. I let the silence sit. It deserved space. Then I turned to the crowd. "This is the family that buried me while I was still breathing," I said. "They erased me to protect their favorite son." Tyler opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes darted between me and the guests like he was looking for an escape hatch. Linda remained seated. She didn't flinch, just folded her hands in her lap and looked at me with that quiet strength only people who have survived storms understand. Karen finally spoke, her voice small, brittle. "We thought you were unstable." I met her gaze. "You made that easier to believe than the truth." Then I turned to Emma. She looked at Tyler like he was a stranger. "You never told me," she said softly. And just like that, the party deflated. Guests stood slowly, avoiding eye contact. Some left their drinks half full. Others murmured apologies that weren't meant for me. No shouting, no chaos. Just the soft shuffle of shoes on grass, the collapse of an illusion. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just walked back through the gate the same way I came in, and this time, no one dared to stop me. I didn't return for revenge. That part was never mine to carry. I came back because I still had something left to build. Not a case, not a headline, a life. My apartment in Durham sat above a thrift store that always smelled faintly of lavender and worn denim. It was small, just a bedroom, a kitchen that hummed at night, and a rug that never quite lay flat in the corners. But it was mine. No one told me how loud to chew, how late to stay up, or which fork went where. I decorated slowly. A hanging plant in the window, a chipped teacup for loose change. On the shelf above my desk sat a single photo in a scorched wooden frame. Me at 12, cheeks smudged with powdered sugar, a carnival behind me. I'd burned the edges. Not out of anger, but to remind myself that even scars can frame something worth keeping. I worked down the street at Second Chapter Books, a quiet little place that smelled like old paper and second chances. I shelved romance novels and dusted poetry collections. A coworker named Marcus once handed me a dog-eared collection of Mary Oliver and said, "You seem like someone who reads in the rain." I didn't say anything, just smiled. He wasn't wrong. I had no social media, no voicemail. My phone rang maybe once a week, and that was enough. One morning, I found a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, printed in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Stiff, deliberate. Inside was a check. Large. Too large. And a note torn from a legal pad. "I should have protected you. Dad." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't cash it either. I slipped the note inside a hollowed-out book I'd once loved. A mystery novel where the twist came too late to save anyone. A few days later, a postcard arrived from Linda, a picture of a lemon bar bitten at the corner. She'd written, "Fresh lemon bars." They turned out just right. That night, I brewed tea, turned on an old jazz station, and stood barefoot on my rug, the one that still curled up at the corners. I let the music play, let the silence rest. Before bed, I pulled open the drawer that held my hospital files, the discharge papers, the newspaper clipping that said "Jane Doe found," a printout of the voicemail transcript. I looked at them one last time. Then I filed them away. I closed the drawer, and this time, I locked it. They didn't break me. They paused me, and now I'm writing the next chapter. Sometimes healing doesn't come with noise or applause. It arrives in quiet moments. Locking a drawer, planting a houseplant, reading a postcard from someone who never stopped believing in you. What I lived through taught me that silence can be just as cruel as words, but also that peace is something you can build, one small act at a time. Family should never be the place you're erased from, but when it is, you still get to decide who you become. And maybe, just maybe, letting go is the bravest thing of all. If this story reminded you of something in your own life or made you pause for a moment, I'd love to hear what stayed with you.